Parents of Reddit, what was the worst thing you got caught doing by your children? My 5-year-old, who was supposed to be sleeping, decided to barge into our room while I was on top of my significant other. I was already yelling, "No, no, no," while the door was opening, so he only got a glimpse while turning around to shut the door. I threw some clothes on and followed him out to tuck him back into bed. He asked me what I was doing on top of Dad. So, me being my quick-thinking self, told my son that I was cracking Dad's back, LOL. Son says, "Oh, like Dr. Kevin, my chiropractor." I said, "Exactly like that." Not a parent, but a forever scarred child. I think I was like 10 when this happened. I had recently discovered the wonderful world of picking locks with bobby pins and walked around the house checking for locked doors I could pick. I found a door that was locked, and it was my parents' bedroom door. I proceeded to pick it and saw my dad's naked ass sticking up in the air, and that's about it before my mom, yelped when she realized the door was open now. I quickly shut the door and ran to my room 2 floors down. I stopped picking bedroom door locks after that. I was changing my daughter when she was a toddler who was about 14 months old, and the little monkey was wriggling around trying to escape. She almost fell off the change table, and I said, "Shit." There was a few seconds of silence, which was broken by her little voice saying "shit" perfectly. Uh-oh. I was sure that she'd start saying that all of the time because I laughed when she said it. She didn't say it again, though. Changing that kid's nappy was like trying to put clothes on a cat. Luckily, toddlers don't have claws, and she wasn't a biter. Not actually bad, but my wife had wanted to rearrange our bedroom closet for a long time, but just couldn't find the time with our, at the time, 2-year-old son constantly underfoot. She was out of the house one afternoon, so I decided to surprise her by taking all the clothes out and putting them back the way she wanted. My son was watching and saw me drape her many skirts and dresses over my arms and shoulders so I could move them out efficiently. My wife came home, and when she asked him what we'd been up to, he casually said, "Papa was wearing your clothes." My wife shot me a weird glance, and I gave her that "I'll explain later" hand gesture that's part of the nonverbal communication every couple develops after many years together. I'm over a foot taller than her and close to 2.5 times her weight, so I'm sure the mental image that flashed in her head was very confusing. And by confusing, I mean traumatizing. Back in the time people recorded TV shows on VHS tapes, my uncle brought us a documentary about wild animals in Africa. It was a Sunday night, all family gathered. Me, 10 years old, my sister, 5 years old, my parents and my grandparents, i.e. my uncle's parents, were sitting on the couch to see it. Let's just say that what we saw was wild. Very wild. As soon as he realized that it was his porn tape, he desperately tried to shut it down, pressing all the buttons on the remote. Having failed, he stood up and pressed our old TV buttons, failing to change the channel and increasing the sound in the process. So I was laughing. My sister wasn't understanding anything. My grandma was covering his eyes. Grandpa was paralyzed in shock. Mom and Dad also trying to help my poor uncle. In the end, someone managed to eject the tape. It all happened in 5 seconds, but I'm sure for my uncle it lasted a lot more than that. My wife and I, during one of our rare copulations, were doing it on the couch. I had a 30-second orgasm that was loud and proud. The stairs to our house have a landing where you look around the wall and see the whole living room. After my unusually and exceedingly long orgasm, I hear my 6-year-old's voice emanating from the stairs, asking, "Daddy, why are you laying on Mommy going, oh, oh, oh?" I, stubbed my toe and it hurt so much I fell over on Mommy. Go to bed. And he did. I'm pretty sure he'll put it together when he's old enough. Got caught by my 6-year-old getting it on. My boyfriend was on top. Luckily, we heard some noise outside the door and pulled the blanket on us. He asked why my boyfriend was on me, and I told him I was really cold. When he was 7, he tried coming in when my boyfriend was going down on me. We thought he went back downstairs. We would put on a movie or show for him and go upstairs to do stuff. But he didn't. I walk out of the room, and he was there sitting at the top of the stairs and asked why was I panting so much. Folding laundry is just so much work. I'm not a parent, but when I was 15, I caught my parents snorting coke with their friend in my little brother's room. They told me it was powdered sugar. Because it was on a plate, they thought that was rational. I still can't believe their nerve. They've recovered since then, and our relationship is way better now. As an adult, I try to cut them some slack. Parenting is hard already, and when you're a struggling addict, it is even more so. But as a teen, I hated them, not only for the addiction, but also for insulting my intelligence like they did. Still something I think about that I need to let go. Not a parent. I couldn't sleep one night. For some reason, I was wandering around the apartment. I saw the balcony doors were open, and my mom was sitting on the railing of the half-balcony ledge with her legs dangling out, probably thinking about jumping. She could have easily just scooted forward a couple of inches and gone over the side. 7th floor. I started sobbing and begging her to come in. She did eventually, calling me an idiot, stupid, ruining everything. She's an alcoholic, so I saw a lot over the years before I moved out at 19, but that one stays with me. Not been caught doing anything sus by my kids as far as I know, but when I was a kid, probably 6 or 7, I opened the door to my parents' room to see Dad plowing Mum doggy style. They both immediately, in one graceful movement, separated and got back under the covers. I didn't really understand or care what I saw. I was just a kid with no compression that I wasn't meant to see it or that I should be horrified. I just had something that I needed to tell them. It wasn't until many years later that I clicked and realized what I saw. This isn't a parent story, but when I was about 14 years old, I used to wake up early every morning to go visit my grandparents, who lived right next to me. It was about 7 a.m., and I went into their house. I didn't hear them talking, nor were they making food, so I was concerned. I opened their bedroom door, and I was scarred, LOL. Caught them having sex, missionary, on the floor. My grandpa didn't bat an eye, but I made eye contact with my grandma for half a second before I shut the door and ran back to my house next door. I laid in disbelief and felt as if I could never see them face to face again. Thankfully, my grandpa and I talked normally later that day, so that was good. LOL. My 7-year-old has a habit of coming out of his room because he's scared. He's done this since he learned to walk, and he's not scared, he's just afraid he's going to miss something exciting. Now that you know that, I can tell you about the time my husband had taken some weed, legal here, and he rarely does it, and being the nice wife I am, I prepared him some fresh-baked cookies, pizza rolls, nachos, and wings. Basically a Munchies buffet on the table after the kids had gone to bed. My kid comes out like he usually does, announces that he's once again scared, and proceeds to have one pair of eyeballs that goes to the size of dinner plates because damned if there isn't an amazing spread just sitting in front of his parents on the coffee table. That was months ago, and the little butthead still thinks that's what we do after they go to bed every day. My wife had a flat in the middle of a driving rainstorm. I went out and rescued her, but in the course of changing the tire, I was soaked through. All the way to my skin, like a swimming pool. We get home, I'm in pain, wet, cold. Our teenager is in the kitchen cooking, which is next to the laundry room. I go to the laundry room dripping wet and tell him, in the next 40 to 60 seconds I will be completely naked. If you want to continue standing there, that's on you. But... Takes off shirt. In the next 20 to 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going. My daughter was real young still, like 2, almost 3, I think. It was real late at night, the lady and I were getting it on. Our house back then was quite small and had no doors inside the house. I guess our daughter woke up and stood in our doorway for a few moments before we noticed. The funny part was, with the low lighting and her glaring at us through the hair in her face, she looked like something from a horror movie. Either that or the time we went camping with some friends and I threw up after eating some magic mushrooms. My son was standing there looking at me, and when I looked up at him, he looked all sorts of trippy. I usually don't do drugs around them, so it felt really weird for me, even though it wasn't a very big dose. Not a parent, but the child. I have many stories about this, LMAO. I walked into my mother having sex with her now husband when I was 13. When I was 5 or 6, my 2 siblings, toddlers, were crying, and I went upstairs to get my mother, and my then stepdad waited well over an hour and a half, only for my stepdad at the time to open the door in his underwear, and my mother, seemingly naked in bed under the covers, just thought they were sleeping, though I was confused because I had knocked about every 5 to 10 minutes during the first hour before giving up. 9 months later, my baby sister was born. 13 years old. My mother had specifically told me to never look through a box that I originally thought held art supplies. One day, being home alone and bored, looking for something to do, and now said box. Pulling it down to see what art supplies she had in there and why she didn't want me to use it since she knew how much of an art geek I am, I found a green fucking dildo. Needless to say, I freaked out and put it back where I found it. Once again, 13, very traumatic age for me. We were going through storage in the garage when I found a box of pictures. I sat down to look through it. There were pictures of me and my vanishing twin in the womb, pictures of my mother in her high school years, and her nudes, printed out. I'm scarred. I was a widower for about a year at the time of this incident. I had a woman over, and she was going down on me in my living room at about 10 p.m. at night. Mid-BJ, I hear a tiny voice across the room say, "Daddy!" From my daughter's perspective, she probably just saw my nude white ass and a half-nude woman on the couch in front of me, because I quickly threw my boxers on and ran over to comfort her and get her back to bed. And she was barely 3 at the time, so she probably didn't even realize what was going on or remember it today. She's almost 6 now. But I cringe like hell whenever I think of it to this very day, or the embarrassment of the woman who was caught in the middle of the act. I was a lonely, widowed parent of 3 young children and just wanted a little action. As parents, we suffer to the bitter end trying to care for our children. I just never thought that said suffering would include a case of blue balls. As the child, it was my dad's birthday, and I was up early eating a bowl of cereal in the kitchen. His bedroom was directly above the kitchen. I hear the bed start squeaking, and I'm like 14, so I know exactly what's going on. I stop eating, disgusted, and just am sitting there waiting for it to end. It does, and my dad comes downstairs, doesn't say a word to me, opens the fridge, and chugs milk straight out of the gallon. Again, doesn't say a word, turns around, goes upstairs, and closes the bedroom door. The bed starts again. So fucking brutal. At least my parents love each other? Not the parent, but I was sleeping with this girl once that had a 6-year-old son. We were fucking so loudly upstairs we woke him up. He quietly crept up the stairs, but her mom ears caught it and told him she was in bed laughing at a funny video. He took the bait and went back to sleep. Except flash forward to a couple days later, out to eat with him and some other friends, and her son, completely unprompted, goes, "Mom was watching a funny video the other night where they kept saying 'fuck me daddy' a lot." Girl was mortified, but the rest of us could not stop laughing. Kid just went right on eating chicken tenders, completely oblivious. I was on the phone to my friend, and we were talking about my daughter. My son was meant to be in his room playing, but went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I was in the living room. Anyway, we were talking about my daughter and my friend's daughter's play date, and were laughing over my daughter falling into the pond at the park we were at. My son starts crying and freaking out. I hung up and asked what was wrong, and he goes, "Is Marcy dead?" My daughter. Turns out he thought his big sis had drowned. Not a parent, but an eldest sister by 7 and 8 years. A few years ago, I was watching my little sisters while my ma and dad were out. Nature calls, and I take my leave from the kitchen where they were enjoying a snack. My sisters weren't too terribly young, but this was around the time when homemade slime was a huge thing. Both my sisters were obsessed with slime and knew multiple ways to make slime out of anything. Well, after falling down the meme rabbit hole on the shitter for a good while, I come back to find slime, but not in bowls or Tupperware or other containers. Oh no. It was on the counter, on the floor, a bit on the walls, and on both sisters. They managed to make slime and get it everywhere in the time I was in the bathroom. Of course, being the responsible one as the babysitter, I was obligated to help them clean up and managed to destroy any evidence before our parents came home. I never got them to tell me how they got the slime on themselves, but I assume it was a slime fight. TLDR, went to the shitter, came back, and both sisters made the kitchen look like an old Nickelodeon game show with homemade slime. Not a parent, but I'm a night owl and always stayed up late if I had nothing going on the next day. I work night shifts now as well, so I'm up all night usually. Anyway, this was when I was still in school. Not that my dad cares, but it'd be nice if he kept in mind I'm sometimes here throughout the night. I've caught my dad on multiple occasions going to the bathroom butt-ass naked at night. From the living room of our house, you can see the upstairs hallway clearly. I've also caught my grandfather doing the same thing when I was visiting there one night. Put some clothes on if you know someone who could still be up is in the house. I was actually the child in this situation. So when I was about 4 or 5, I was making a sandwich, and my weak ass couldn't open the peanut butter jar, so I went to ask my mum to. I walked in to see my future stepdad on top. They both froze and stared right at me. I knew what was going on. To that point in time, I was basically raised on Geordie Shore and Family Guy, so I just turned around and walked out. A little later, my mum came out and asked me not to tell anyone, especially my nan, who we were living with, because my mum was so young. After some discussion, we were on our way to getting my first iPad. Edit. My mother was about 19 at the time, and the guy about 21. She got pregnant with me at age 14, for y'all's wondering. Not a parent, but my sister had a baby young and lived at home with us when her son was 0 to 10 years old. When he was real little, my nephew would get scared at night and run into my room, and we would watch cartoons until he fell asleep, which normally I don't mind because he was my little homie. One time, my boyfriend at the time and I were bumping grossies when he had a nightmare. He didn't just open the door, he jumped into bed with us. Luckily, my ex is a really sweet guy, so after excusing himself to the bathroom and getting dressed, we went out into the living room and watched cartoons with him until we all fell asleep. Luckily, he was way too young to know what happened. Oh dear God. Can't even count the number of times we got walked in on in the middle of a sex act and hurriedly tried to cover up or just stop. What are you doing? Just taking a nap. Oh, okay, can I go back out and play? Yes! What are you doing? Me inside her, she's sitting on the kitchen counter. Oh, nothing, just giving your mom a hug. Okay, can I go play my video game? Yes! Me going down on her in the living room. Son comes out of his bedroom after bedtime. Can I get a glass of water? Yes! What are you doing? I think I dropped a contact lens. Want to help me find it? No! Not a parent, but the kid in the story. One of the ones that stuck with me is when I was 10, my ma'am was in hospital because she had been in a bad car crash with a bus. So her friends had to come to check in on me, and my dad, the friends had been sat downstairs for a while, until one of them said to go see why my dad was taking so long. So I go upstairs, and my uncle is injecting my dad with heroin. I was shouted at to go away. I had to go downstairs and make up a lie about why he was taking so long. My little cousin used to think I was the most amazing person in the world. She would fawn over me and text me like crazy when she knew she was coming to town for the holidays. She'd stay with us for a night or two every year for Passover. I basically treated her like an adult the entire time she was growing up and tried being the cool teenager cousin. A few years ago, she's like 15 at this point, I was in my 20s, I decided it would be fun to smoke a joint before Seder. Well, she was curious and caught me and my older brother smoking outside. The look on her face ruined me. She still talks to me, but I can tell things have changed. Though I am not the parent, but the child. One day I was in a hotel at Santa Cruz, California. BTW, I would recommend going there. It is really beautiful. Night falls upon us, and like any normal family, we go to sleep. So my mom sleeps in the bed with my dad, and I think you all know where that is going to go. And my mom makes me and my little brother sleep on the same bed. I don't really think much about it until I wake up in the middle of the night to moaning. At this time, I really needed to use the restroom, and I didn't want to see nor embarrass my parents because at the time I was young. I didn't want to have the talk yet. so I decided to stay in bed. It comes to the point where I can't hold it anymore, and I get up, and there you see it. My mom giving head to my dad. My little kid mind was horrified seeing my own kind mother giving head to my dad. And I ran into the bathroom. The next day, I had the talk. I was at a house with a bunch of kids from my dad's girlfriend's side of the family. We were all playing up and down the street over the entire house while the adults drank and did who knows what. They started ushering all of us one by one into this back bedroom and told us to stay there. I did not want to be in there, so I snuck out and sat on the couch in the middle of the living room. They didn't notice me forever, somehow, and put on some hardcore porn for everyone to watch. My dad, his girlfriend, my aunts, uncles. I still remember my dad suddenly grabbing me as this girl with only a tie on comes on screen and shoving me into that back room. I must have been the last one because they locked the door after that. Mostly just curse words. My son is 3. I live in Texas. My mom lives in Arizona. It was about a year since the last time they physically saw each other. She was visiting and staying at my brother's pad. He loves her and vocalizes how he misses her. We communicate through FaceTime, Marco Polo, etc. Nothing but love, truly. We went to visit her there, and when we were leaving, he looks back and says, "Bye, bitch." Damn. My mom is cool, though. She laughed her ass off. I was steaming. I try and censor myself as much as possible, but I slip a lot. I curse for emphasis, not vulgarity. We are all good people. Some of our little life details get you the wrong impression. C'est la vie.